Hello, everyone, and welcome to another broadcast of Northwest Georgia Cryptics. I am Rick Weaver, joined by my co-host Blake Duckworth. Tonight we have a very special guest, Mr. Mike Smith. Mike is an athletic director at a school in Kentucky. Mike has had some encounters with Sasquatch, and I'm going to bring Mike on and let Mike tell his story. Blake, go ahead, bud.
How's it going tonight, guys? As always, if you're not already subscribed, hit the subscribe button, bell notification, like, and a comment. I hope everybody's doing well, especially in the craziness that's going on in the United States right now and the world in general. We sure do appreciate your support, guys. Let's keep this channel growing. That'll be it, Ricky.
All right, guys, and remember if you have any sightings, any reports that you want to share with us, you can do that on our Facebook page, or you can send me an email, northwestgeorgiacryptics@gmail.com, and share your encounters with us. If you want to come on the show, tell your story, you're more than welcome. If you want to stay anonymous, we can do that too.
Yeah.
So without any further ado,
go ahead, Ricky.
Without any further ado, let's go ahead and bring Mike on, and everybody give him a big hand. Mike, hello, man.
How's it going, buddy?
Going good, guys. Thanks for having me on. This is great.
Mike, if you want to go ahead and just give us a short bio of yourself and share your encounter with the viewers.
Okay, well, my name's Mike Smith. I'm an athletic director at a small high school here in Western Kentucky. I've been coaching soccer and working and teaching in high school for about 20 years. Army brat, moved all over the place, born in North Carolina, but ended up at Fort Campbell. My dad ended up at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, and I was I guess I was 16 when we actually moved permanently to Kentucky. Now, I came down here every summer of my life. That's where my dad's family's from. And so I've been right around Kentucky and Barkley Lakes. I'll be 49 this year, so it's been a long time. Get in the woods as much as I can. Fish more than I hunt, but yeah.
That's me.
Yeah.
That is me 100%. I'm a big fisherman.
Right. So, I'm just an old country boy trying to make it like everybody else, man. Oh yeah, I love it. I love it. So anyway, I had a sighting back in May, and for about a good month, wished I hadn't had it. It changes your perspective. I mean, it just changes everything. You've come to know, and like I said, I've been in the woods my whole life, and so I got in touch with an investigator and had a real professional investigation, trying to make sure that I wasn't crazy, and have gotten involved in the Facebook groups and shows like this. It's great. It really helps me just to share my story and connect with other people that believe. And so I'll just share my story with you guys tonight. And if it helps, that's wonderful. Any questions you have, I guess just get with Rick or Blake. I see a comment thing. I'm new to the online stuff, so just interrupt, let me know, and I'll answer any questions you have. So basically, in May.
Come on now. Mike, it never fails.
You can't beat Kenny Rogers, though.
His phone never goes off until we start a live. It never fails. It always goes off.
I understand, but that's a way to interrupt, though. Like I said, you can't beat the gambler.
At least it's a good song.
Right. So
you can
anyway,
go ahead, Mike.
Yes, sir. I was cooped up like everybody else. Last year we bought a boat, and my wife and I got a 16-year-old daughter and a 5-year-old daughter, and boy, we had a great time last year fishing out on Kentucky Lake. My wife, she wasn't a fisherman until that season, and man, she was eating up with it. But we got pregnant, and so this spring she wasn't able to get out a lot, and we had the baby in March, and then we're cooped up. She lost her job. She's one of the ones that actually lost her job through all the COVID stuff, and we're blessed that she got it back, and I was able to keep working. But anyway, we finally got out in May. Yes, it was May 9th that we actually went out. I think the sighting was May 10th, but we went out on a Saturday. It was beautiful. Found this sandbar out on the main lake so I could dock the boat. The girls, it was warm enough to swim, and just had such a great day. We wanted to go back and do it again. And when we got back to the lake the next day, it was a Sunday. Man, those swells were 3 feet and the wind was blowing, and we just couldn't get out. And but they didn't want to go home, so I knew a little spot by a campground that I could get my boat in. The campground was closed, but there was a spot where they put kayaks in, and I've got a 16-foot bass tracker. I knew I could back it off in there. So we just, water was up high, so we just put her in, and man, it still wasn't any good. But we went a little ways around. It's a pretty big cove, and it's actually a little creek arm, so there's several coves within this. And we got to a little spot and just decided we're going to cook some hot dogs, try to fish right there, and then go on home. And I mean, the spot was so small and muddy. My 16-year-old got out with me, but the other girls, they stayed in the boat. I just beached it, built a little fire, and there's a 2-mile road coming into this place to get down there, and there was nobody on it. There's no hiking trails. There's nothing. And I was cooking the hot dogs, and up behind me, I had my back to the ridge. I heard some walking. And as we all listened, we all heard some walking. So we thought it was just some people up there. So I told the girls, keep a watch out. There's some people up there. You never know who's going to show up. Most people are friendly. You never know. So I just wanted them to be cautious. We went ahead and ate the hot dogs, and we're about done. And then my oldest daughter said, what happened to those people? We didn't ever see anybody. And we quit hearing the walking. I said, yeah, that's strange. Let's just go on, get out of here, go fish a little. As I was pushing the boat off, we heard a knock. They all heard it, the looks on their face. And my 16-year-old daughter said, well, what's that? Her name's Mira. So she said, what's that, Dad? And I'm just joking. And I said, man, they say the Bigfoot does that. And it was probably about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It was getting the evening, but I just picked up a stick and knocked on the tree that I had the boat tied up to. And immediately from a different direction, no more than 100 yards away, we hear an immediate response knock. And so now, we're a little different, but I'm still saying it's some kids up there messing with us.
Now was it a single knock, or
each one was a single knock. So we heard it the first time, it was a single knock. I gave a single knock, and then we got a single knock back. Okay. And then I just decided I was going to look up there where I would have probably just blasted on across. I thought, no, we're going to go slow and look up there and see what we can see. And we came around to this little inlet, and when we did the investigation, we had a guy that was 6'4" get up there where I saw it. And it was really cool because when I looked up there, when I had the sighting, there was some light. There was just some light coming through the trees, and it was on the side of a tree and on the ground. And my eyes gravitated towards that spot, and I saw it. He was standing there. I've got a picture behind me. I don't know if I can turn it. I drew that picture. That's what I saw. Okay. Man, I yelled, holy, there's Bigfoot. And I think if I hadn't yelled, I think that thing would have probably just stood there and watched us. But when I yelled, it moved away. And then I turned the boat so I could let the girls see it. And it moved away again. I saw it out of the corner of my eye. And then when I turned the boat again, it came down into a little gully to go back up a hill. And I mean, I saw the palm of its hand. It was just right there, man. It was going up, and it's the fastest thing I've ever seen.
What was the most noticeable feature you noticed about the creature? If something stood out to you more than anything.
Yeah, the width of this thing, it was massive. It was massive. So when the guy was in there, he raises his hand up. He said he can palm an 8-foot ceiling. I told the guys I thought it was between 7 and 9, and he put his hand up, and it was probably 8 feet tall, every bit of 4 feet wide, maybe more. I mean, that's the main thing. I got to look at its face. So the eyes were deep set, hooded nose. You could see the skin. And where a mouth was, and then I wouldn't call it a beard, but there was fur that kind of blended. looked like a big linebacker, a little point on the head. I saw it from the front, so it wasn't necessarily, a cone or anything, but it was a slope. But the main thing was you're not used to seeing something that big. And when we did the rangefinder, the water was down when I took him back out, and it was 83 yards. But we figured there was a big blowdown where my boat was that day, and we figured it was about 63 yards and then 38 yards when I saw him run.
So
it ran up the hill, and we saw my daughter finally saw some trees shaking, and then I just stood there, and I'm thinking, I knew what it was. It wasn't a bear. I mean, I knew what it was. I'm just shocked.
Bear don't run like that on their 2 feet. So they can stand on their 2 feet, but far as run fast, run a distance, no.
Yeah. Oh no, I saw its palm grab a tree and pull itself over. And when we got down in there, it was moving so fast. I had no idea how much ground it covered, and it went up a 4-foot bank like it was just taking a normal step. It kind of hunched over. But as we were leaving, then I still was going to go to the other side of the lake and maybe try to just cast a little back to the truck. And as I'm getting ready to hit the motor, man, my wife and daughter, they looked at each other and just scared. And what'd you hear? What was that? Did you hear that? It was kind of a frustrated growl they said they heard. And they were dead set on going home. So what we think after, I came home, and man, I combed the internet, and I'd seen Finding Bigfoot on TV, but I hadn't really been into this. So I combed the internet, and I found a guy named Charlie Raymond here in Kentucky, the head of the Kentucky Bigfoot Research Organization, been doing it 30 years. And I read a lot of his investigations. He's part of BFRO as well. And I knew he was a credible source, and I called him and left a message, and he called me right back. It was almost midnight. And he thinks what happened is there was 2 that probably smelled the fire. Yeah. There probably had been a lot less traffic in the woods and in the area because of the shutdown. As far as boat, he just theorized that even though they're probably nocturnal, it was close enough in the evening that they smelled the food, and probably the one realized that there was people and gave that knock for the other one to stop. Yeah. And then when I knocked, that other one thought that I was telling him it was okay and stood up.
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely nocturnal animals. I mean, they move around more at night, but I mean, we've had activity during the day. So, I mean, that doesn't surprise me one bit.
Right. So I got into it, man. I started going back a little, and I've got some great prints. I messed up my first casting. I've got great videos. I found 2 16-inch long, 6.5 to 8-inch wide, depending on where you measure it. Really good prints. I found some sticks laid down in some different shapes. Had some response knocks. They whistle a lot. The place I'm going, I would go in and I would knock on the same tree when I get there. Knock one time, kind of stand around. I've had people with me. You hear this whistle, and you just know it's not a bird or not a normal thing. I think they're clapping back at me. I've had some stuff thrown over to not at me, but to make me look. It seems like there's always 2. Yeah. It seems like where I'm at, there's always.
They stay in family. I mean, or in packs or whatever you want to call it. Yep. I mean, if they're one around, they're usually a couple around somewhere close.
Yeah, I took my son, and he was a total skeptic, and he was there. This print we found it on the way back, and I mean, it was so fresh and deep, and really, like I said, it's the one that I made this casting of. You can see the toe here. The toes were actually pushed up in the mud. You can see the break. It actually looks a lot better from the backside, but I had never used hydrocal or anything, so it was but when we went in, it wasn't there, and we knew it. And he was skeptic, and then he heard the whistle and was looking. And I happened to look up on a ridge, probably 100 yards away. It just kind of looked out from a tree and turned around and went back. It's like they use these ridge lines here. Yeah. They use these ridge lines. I wouldn't call them mountains, but they're pretty good sized hills. And they just stay up there. And, if you're coming from one side and they don't want to mess with you, they go down the other side, and
Yeah.
vice versa. So it's a neat little spot. It's been real interesting to me. I haven't been threatened yet. Now I go the opposite way. It seems like they're real curious. So if I get some action, I kind of go away from it and let them come to me instead of, I'm not going after one, man. These things are, I don't think they want to hurt a person, really.
But you're not trying to find out.
No, I mean, that's the thing that sticks with me. I mean, like I said, the guy that was there, he's 6'4", he was broad, and I told him it was at least 2 of him wide, and I would say maybe even 3 of him. You know, you asked at the beginning, you're just not used to seeing something that big. And you always think when you see them that it's going to be that they're 7, 8, 9 feet tall, which is impressive, but it just pales into comparison to the muscle structure. And, you know, I could see the definition in this thing. The thing that got me with it too is the hair changed color. So when that light was shining in, it was just like it was really kind of lighter, like almost a reddish, blondish red. But then as the sunlight went away, it was a more brownish reddish. And then when it got down in that little draw, it was brown. But the hair reacted to the light just like natural hair does. And it, you know, it was just so cool. It was just yeah, man, if Shaquille O'Neal was out there that day and happened to know I was going to be there and happened to have paid 20 grand for a suit in Hollywood, you know, I mean, it's crazy when you start talking about all those things, you realize that the only thing left is that Bigfoot exists.
Well, that's the funny part about sightings like that. Everybody's like, well, couldn't it have been a human? Well, it sounds more crazy when you say that and you actually think about what they would go through just to make that happen. I mean, it's, you know, that makes less sense than it being a Bigfoot.
Man, I tell you what, I watched Survivor Man's been doing a Bigfoot series.
Yep.
And I watched an episode where he tried to fool Dr. Jeff Meldrum to get a footprint. And he had a special effects guy make it. It cost him $10,000 to make these footprints, get them, cast them, and do all this stuff. And I highly doubt an average guy, you know, is going to get out there and put that much into a hoax.
Yeah.
So, it was really validating for me. Like I said, my sighting is on YouTube on a Kentucky Bigfoot research organization, and it says that he called it the Beast of LBL because there's also some werewolf activity, werewolf beast legend, dogman thing, which I'm reading a lot about. I can't really
discredit. Yeah,
exactly. So, but it's on there. He went back that night, and they got some response knocks that they share, and they got some howls that they share. So it really validated it for me.
Now, I got a quick question now. For the area, are there any other Bigfoot sightings that's come out of that area or anywhere close? Yes.
And I learned that when I started researching. There's several. There's more. You know, I don't want to give away. You know, you don't always want to give away your locations. But there's 2 lakes there. There's the Barkley Lake, and then there's the Kentucky Lake. And this stretch of land is a 70,000 acres, which is about 100 square miles. In the middle of these, and the Barkley Lake side has a lot more sightings, but there's stories going way back here. A couple kids, when it was populated, before they flooded, before the Corps Engineers TVA made these lakes, there was thriving iron furnaces, and there's a story back in the late 1800s where some kids shot at something, and they called it a hairy wild man.
Yeah. And, you know what's kind of crazy about your sighting is it doesn't, as far as what happened, isn't necessarily the same, but the area. My sighting was around a lake.
Right.
I mean, it makes sense. You got 2 lakes. You got 2 bodies of water.
Yeah.
You got 100 miles of, I would say, pretty dense forest.
Yep.
Deer.
Yep.
And all kinds of forage.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't they be there?
The neat thing I found about this place too, and so there's things when you get out hiking, you know, there's these ridges and there's something called a saddle that'll connect a ridge. And if you don't know where these are, you're going around. But if you know these places, I found this old cut through road, and what would take me 45 minutes to walk around, if you take this cut through road, it takes about 10. And I got to looking at the topography. Somebody could stand up, a person could be up on one of these ridges, see everything around them for probably a mile. I mean, you could hear a car coming in, you could hear a boat coming in, and then you could choose to be gone. And so there's spots like that that people don't realize because you look at it in human terms. But you know, these guys, they know every saddle. So where a human's going to have to go around, go down a hill, through a bottom, back up a hill, they know where the little saddle is. It takes them minutes, and as fast as they are, you just got to get out there and open your perspective, and then again, you realize, man, this is real. It's real. So yeah, I mean that's about it. I'll be happy to answer questions or
You know, Mike, I had a sighting back in 1981, and this is really what got me into Bigfoot research, and I've been doing it ever since. And basically, as Blake said, you know, mine was on the creek about 10 miles from where I live. You know, these things are drawn to bodies of water.
yes.
So, you know, it would make perfect sense that where you were at, where Blake had his sighting, where I had my sighting, and most of the people that we've actually interviewed on this thing, other than, you know, people that's had road crossings, most all the other sightings has either been around rural cemeteries or bodies of water.
9 times out of 10, they're a body of water within, you know, a 5-mile radius, 10-mile radius, whether it be a creek, river, lake. I mean, they're usually a body of water pretty close by.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's, man, you know, I took my son, we were trout fishing up in Lake Cumberland, and there's an area where there was a bunch of deer coming along. We saw them, about 5 of them. And we just froze, wanted to see how close we could get to them. And they got in this little thicket. You couldn't see a one of them. And I was telling my son, there's 600-700 pounds of deer probably sitting right there, 10 yards from us. We can't see them.
And that's a deer. That's a deer. That's a deer. Something that doesn't care if it's seen or not.
Exactly right. They're not trying to hide. They didn't even know we were there. So you start thinking these things are trying to hide. And it's just so, man, and there are actually, I told my son, I said, there's bear up here where we are, black bear. Have you seen one? Have you seen a deer? I mean, people say, well, why don't you see them? I think those people hadn't spent much time in the woods, because all deer hunters know, you know, opening day of gun season's fine. Day 2, you know, you could have been walking on deer the week before, and then you're not going to see one all day. You know, you're not going to see it. So the stuff can disappear and blend in. And if it wasn't for roadkill, we wouldn't know what half the stuff we've got in our states are. We've got armadillo. Armadillo have come up here to Kentucky now. We're starting to see a few on the road. I've still never seen one in the wild.
Got a quick question.
Sure, go ahead.
What's your opinion? You know, how do you feel about them having some type of paranormal aspect about them? Not saying that they are a biological creature, but far as cloaking or you know, things that you hear about sightings that are pretty common that aren't things that we know as humans.
Well, I tell you what. So I'm personally, in my journey with this, I've got 3 lines of thought that I'm really honestly entertaining. One is the standard. It's a biological unknown hominid creature, Gigantopithecus, Neanderthal, whatever.
I mean, I do believe it is a biological creature.
Yeah,
because, I mean, we see them. It is a living, breathing creature.
Yes,
but
absolutely.
For some reason, they are paranormal aspects about them. For what reason, you know, what it is, you know, what makes them that way.
And see, that's what I was going to say. There's also a Christian aspect to this about, you go back to Genesis, and I'm a Christian, so I haven't discounted that. But I'll tell you what, when you get out there, I've literally been on the side of a ridge we found an old homestead, and we had been having some interaction, me and my daughter, and I always have my video, and that's the first thing you notice. Like with ghost hunting, if you've ever done that, it's coincidental that you always have the battery drains and the equipment failure right when you need it to work. The same thing happens with Bigfoot.
Yep. Yep.
And then I was looking at this old well, and my daughter decided to knock, and we had walked away from the activity. You could feel the footsteps of this thing that ran down the ridge. I'd say it might have started 30 yards away. And since it was actually down below and we were up high, she was scared. She looked, she said, "What? That's something running." And they disappear into thin air. They just do. And the few night investigations I've been on, I had read about the lights that are associated with them, and we saw them.
I've seen an orb. That's the thing for some reason.
Yeah, and I mean,
I've seen it wasn't a lot. It was an orb, but this orb, well, I can't totally discredit being to the location we were at, also being a cemetery,
right.
but it is also the same place I had my Bigfoot sighting. So I don't know for sure if that was just something paranormal, far as the a ghost or whatever you want to call it, or if it was on the Bigfoot side of things. But I have seen an orb in an area that they were Bigfoot active.
Yeah. Well, so and I will say too, I'm a firm believer that science and technology has de-evolved us in a lot of ways as far as how we're connected and the abilities that even people have. A lot of the intuition, you study the Native American cultures and the things they knew about as far as seasons changing. So, if they've evolved to rely on that stuff, and we have a scientific community that if they can't convince you they've got it figured out, they're afraid to say, "I don't know."
Well,
they're not going to do that.
We've lost our primal instincts.
Absolutely.
As humans, I mean, our way of life is totally different. Was 250 years ago. I mean, it's most people wouldn't even know what to do if they had to go into the woods and survive. So that takes our connection away with the world and how everything was meant to work.
Yeah, and here's just as in the terms we're electronic. We have that spark that gives you life. I believe it's a soul, but whatever you believe, it's electronic. We're generating electricity. We interact with fields. And what if a Bigfoot can do that to an extent that when they get excited, or you got to I tend to believe that if it can happen in nature anywhere, it's probably possible to happen for people. You got the electric eel, for example. We have examples of natural creatures that can generate charges. So, I'm not counting anything out, because when you get out there and do it, you can't. You just can't.
Well, it's amazing that even for some reason, they are humans that are able to connect to something deeper. Does that make any sense? And that's just kind of what you were just talking about. I mean, I feel like we are capable of a lot more than we realize we are.
Absolutely. I tell you what, it's a neat thing. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of remote viewing or not. It's the CIA. Well, my dad was in some special forces and was at the Pentagon and was exposed to some stuff. I'm a speech teacher. When I'm a classroom teacher, I teach speech and communication. I've got 2 master's degree and a bachelor's degree in interpersonal communication. And there's something called remote viewing, and I'm by far not an expert. I've taught kids how to do this, and what we're talking about is if you shut down your brain and just allow things to come to you. For example, I've taught high school students, you take some objects, take a few that are good at it, you do some tests, you isolate them, you take some more students, the ones that aren't good at it, and you give them some objects and you tell them to go around the school and hide these objects. In every class, and I've done this 4 years in a row with speech classes, there's a couple students that close their mind, do the technique. They tell you what object it was, who took it, and where it is. And it's just by learning to shut down what your mind is telling you to think about. and allow the information to come to you. It's not supernatural at all. It's an ability that we all have.
And that's something that blind people are able to do. You know,
Oh, absolutely.
once you lose a sense, your other senses become, you know, more
Right.
you know, more active.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's like a blind person, they can't see, but they can know they're not running, you know when a wall's there, know when something's there, you know, they're able to feel it or sense it. I guess it would be what you're talking about, remote
absolutely.
viewing.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I think these things are heightened senses. They have this knowledge of when we're in the woods. I feel like they know when you step out of your truck that you're there. You know, you talk about.
I had a deal happen to me. I had a deal happen to me a couple of years ago. We were down in South Georgia deer hunting, and I think it was like 6, 8 of us down there, and we were sitting around camp about 6 o'clock that evening, and now to say whether this is mind speak or what, but I just got this feeling, you know, that something told me to leave the area, and you know, at first I didn't pay any attention to it. Well, it about every 15, 20 minutes I was getting this like leave the area. It was like somebody standing talking to me.
Yep.
And done this on up till about 10 o'clock at night. Well, by about 10 o'clock, I finally told these boys, I said, look, boys, I don't know what it is. You know, it ain't. And we were actually down there Bigfoot hunting. And, you know, I told them, I said, boys, it ain't that I'm scared or anything, but they something been nagging at me for the last 3 or 4 hours telling me to leave. So we actually packed up and left. Well, a little over a week later, a friend of mine that lives in the area down there called me and told me that a young girl had been raped and murdered about 2 miles from where we were at the weekend we were down there.
Yeah.
So now whether this was something to do with that, I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, I really don't know. But I do know.
Yeah.
Ahead, Mike.
Well, I was going to say, strictly from a communication standpoint, and again, I teach this stuff. Why does home field advantage affect athletes? The field's the same, the game's the same, the rules are the same, the refs are the same. It's not the noise, it's the feeling. Everybody has walked into a room and known the people in there were having a pretty negative or positive conversation. It's not supernatural. And
Yeah,
so
you can instantly sense it is when you walk into the room.
Absolutely. And so you take that with Bigfoot, and then, you know, something I learned, I was a skeptic. So the first thing I asked was, why aren't they all over trail cam? And again, Charlie Raymond said, well, do you believe that cats and deer and things that are nocturnal have night vision? I said, absolutely. Well, why wouldn't Bigfoot be able to have that? I said, well, maybe he does. Next question. Have you ever had night vision goggles on? Well, I have not. Well, when you put them on, you can see the things that are coming off these cameras. And then I realized, man, if my eyes have de-evolved in the same period their eyes could have evolved, they probably see these things. They probably see them lit up like a Christmas tree. And that's not crazy. That's a real logical, scientific, common sense.
It makes
Right,
it,
that's
100%
things
sense.
that people don't realize about these creatures. You know, we're out there 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. You know, we've got our flashlights on, whatever, night lights, you know, to be able to see. Well, these creatures are out there and they can see you no matter what you're doing. I mean, you can be standing there in the pitch dark, no light, whatever.
Yeah.
These things can still see you. These things have an ability that is way beyond what we have. You know, I've had people tell me, oh, they're just, you know, if they're out there, they're dumb apes. Well, you know, no, there's nothing dumb about these creatures.
No.
These creatures, in the research I've done over the past 40 years or so, these creatures, they have an ability to know when you come in the woods. Their sense of smell has got to be a lot greater than ours.
Yeah.
They can see at night.
Yeah.
They're you know, when we go into the woods at night, we are in their element. We're in their home.
Yeah.
You know, we've left our home and went into their home.
Absolutely.
They know we're there. They know what we do the whole time we're there. And they could be 10, 15 yards from you and you not even know it.
Oh,
The only thing.
Go ahead.
The only thing that actually gives these creatures away is Blake and I, and my roommate Michael, my nephew went down to the lake back. Uh, it's been probably 9 years ago. Uh, Down at Lake Altoona where Blake had his sighting, and we walked around the lake, started up this little hill, and just as I started up this hill, man, I got one of the most dreadful smells that I've ever smelled in my life. Have
Yeah.
you ever encountered something like that?
Yes, sir. So not all the time. There's been a couple times, and I had my daughter with me, and it's almost like I feel like they might be able to emit this smell, and it's not just their fur or the wet dog, but it did. So I've walked into a wall of it, and we're talking maybe a 15, 20-foot radius. It's like a sour milk, wet dog, and sulfur is what we get around here, and I mean, when you're out of it, you can't. It's like it hangs right there, and I've had that happen a couple times. But I would say the majority of times, I don't smell it.
That's exactly what we've experienced.
Right?
We haven't smelled it many times, but we
Yeah.
maybe 5 times, maybe 6 times, a handful of times, and that's
Yeah.
exactly. It's not like you smell it all over the place.
Right.
It's like you'll walk through a certain area and you smell it. You can walk past that area and not smell it, and it's not often.
Yeah. And see, that's the great thing, guys, because I'm new into this. I'm not even a year into this, and it helps me so much because in the back of your mind, I'm still wanting to maybe think I'm crazy a little bit.
No,
You know,
exactly what you're saying is what I've experienced. I mean,
it,
I mean,
yes,
you
and so
know,
right.
geographically wise, I mean, for the area, for
Yeah.
it's 100% on point.
It's so great, and you start realizing that I've now talked to a couple dozen people. Are we all crazy? And this is people from Texas to Georgia to Kentucky, North Carolina, Ohio, spread out all around. Are we all crazy? And is it a coincidence that we all have the exact same experience? And
That's exactly
There are a
right.
lot more, if that's the case, there are a lot more crazy people than people realize because there are a
Yep.
lot of
Let me
people
tell
have
you. Let me
sightings and
tell you.
have stuff happen that you never know about.
Yep.
Let me tell you, Mike, about a guy from Tennessee that I've interviewed and I've talked to him quite a few times on Facebook. Uh, he goes up there. He actually wouldn't tell me the area that he goes to, but it's national forest. He
Okay.
said where he parked at to his campsite that he normally camps, it's about a half mile that he had to walk in. Okay. He said when he first started going up there, about 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, just about every weekend when he was there, he had something throw these small pebbles in against his tent. And he said it was
Yeah.
like that for maybe 2 or 3 hours, them throwing these things at him. Well, he said that he got thinking one day, and he said he went to Walmart and he bought him a bucket of tennis balls. He took those tennis balls up there, and this goes into play how smart these things are. He took
Right.
those tennis balls up there, and he said that night when the rocks started raining down on his tent, he said he got throwing these tennis balls back into the woods. Okay, he said that he could actually hear these things running back and forth through the woods.
Yeah.
And he said the next morning when he got up to leave, he said he really didn't think nothing about it. He went down and got there where his car was at. Okay, 5 or 6 other vehicles parked there in the parking lot where he was at. These tennis balls that he had thrown the night before were all lined up across the hood of his car. Now,
Wow.
if they
Yep.
were not an intelligent species, you tell me how they
Oh,
knew what
yeah.
car to place
Yeah.
those tennis balls on.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, I believe it, man. And when you hear them, yeah, I've got a video of my daughter when she first went, and most of the time a deer doesn't follow you around the woods; they run away from you. So you can hear noises and convince it's something else. And I'm trying to explain to her, and I was telling her, that is a deer, that's a squirrel, that was the first time you hear these things running away or moving. Her face was like, "That's a person. That's two." What? And you're just
You
like,
can tell the difference between bipedal and
yes. And I said they knew when we got out of the truck. They were watching. I tell you what we did. I took some apples, and I've had some apples taken. I put them at this one spot I go to.
That's actually what I was just getting ready to ask you, is if
Yeah.
you tried gifting.
And the coolest thing that happened to us though is the one time all I had, we knew we had one watching us. So I took a Rice Krispie treat. I took it out of the package. I bent a sapling down and put it, what I'm thinking is about 8 feet up, speared it on a limb. And then I put the foil on that limb so we could see it. We were gone for a little over an hour. We came back through there. The Rice Krispie treat was laying on the ground, pushed back together. It had been split in half, pushed back together on the foil. Inside a footprint, there was a stick about this big around and 2 feet long that was pushed over 2 inches into the ground lengthwise, where it basically you could see it stood on it. And it's just like, what? No hikers, nobody. There's nobody back here. I found rocks and stuff stuck inside. There's a tree I want to get back to, and I may go this weekend. I found some rocks just stuck in the fork of this big tree, probably a mile off of any path. And it's one of those forks where I don't know if they throw these at something to hunt. I don't know if they throw them at each other, if it's just a good spot, but I'm going to gift some stuff back to them. Like I said, I took apples a few times, and they've disappeared.
That's one thing a lot of people don't realize is to look for, like, stacking of rocks and stuff like that.
Yes.
Could it be human activity? Sure. But you have to look. You have to use common sense. You have to,
Right.
You have to think about it. You have to look at where it's at. Why would somebody rent? If it doesn't make sense, then
Right.
it's probably something else. I mean.
Oh, and so I've got a guy I took with me. He's real interested. I post a little bit of this stuff on my Facebook page. Not, I don't advertise it, but so this guy messaged me, and I noticed and I let them, just for my own sanity still, I let them kind of hear it and experience it. I don't start planting a bunch of seeds. And I noticed he was walking through, and if a tree or a twig was in his way, he'd just break it off. And so I said to him, why are you doing that? And he said, well, it's in my way. And I said, start looking about 6 to 8 feet in the air. And then that was his thing all day. We had what we thought, nothing, minor class B stuff, but he found so many, and he was fascinated. They might only be snapped, they'll be twisted. You can see the twists in them, where somebody pushed it a direction and twisted it 6, 7, 8 feet off the ground.
Right, and Mike, when you start finding things in the area that you're at, if you'll pay attention, most of the time, when you find tree breaks like that would have been broken, twisted, most of them are broke on the same side of the tree and are actually pointed in the same direction.
I wondered about that. I'll look for that. That's I haven't looked close enough or taken enough pictures to really document that, but that's cool, man.
Every area that Blake and I have been, and I've been out with other researchers, and every area that we found things of this nature, 90% of the time, well, I'm going to say 95% of the time,
wow.
The trees will actually be snapped 6, 8. I have found them high as 10 foot off the ground where they just snap with a twist, but they'll all be on the same side of the tree and they'll be pointed in one direction.
And we've actually found one tree that was upside down before.
Wow.
Yeah, we've actually found one tree that was uprooted, turned upside down, and shoved back in the ground.
This wasn't a small tree. This was a full 50, 60-foot tree.
Yeah. Wow.
Now you tell me what human being, I can't do it. I doubt if you could do it.
I wouldn't want to meet the person that could.
No. Wow. Well,
one of the best ways to learn about their behavior, and this is just something I would put out there. Start journaling their activity.
Yes.
Write down anything that happened, so you can learn more by that, following their not specific behavior, but their common behavior.
Right.
And it will help you further your research of how to do things.
Yeah, I've done a little of that. I'm not as good. I take pictures. I know that puts a time and date, and I make some notes in my phone. Something I'm real curious about that what I've been, now that it's gotten cold, I've actually established. I purposely go. I'll say I've got probably maybe a 2 to 4 mile radius where I've got activity and we see signs. And if you get out of that too far, I'm not seeing as much. I'm really stretching. And so I'm wondering, do they have a range? Do they have a summer range? Do they have a winter range? I don't know if you guys have any input on that, but
I believe that they do migrate.
okay.
Yeah, now,
Okay.
I'll tell you one thing. That's a lot of research that I've been doing over the years. We live here about 20 miles from what they call the Appalachian Trail.
Okay.
It actually comes down on over to LJ there on what they call Springer Mountain.
Right.
The mountain over there my dad grew up on. My
Okay.
dad told me a story that when he and his oldest brother Glenn, dad said he was about maybe 9 years old. He and Glenn back then they had to walk out. They lived about 3 miles over in there off the main road, and they had to walk out to meet the school bus every morning.
Yeah.
And he said that Glenn always took a shotgun with him because they were bar in the area, whatever.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they would leave the shotgun. They had one certain tree they'd leave it propped up against in the mornings when they got on those school bus. And this was back in the 1920s, 1930s.
Right.
And he said that one morning they'd started out from home over there and they'd got about a mile into their little walk up there, and they topped this hill. And he said there was something come out on the road, and he said this thing was standing on two legs, walked just like a man walking. He said, but he said to him at that young age, he said he thought it was a bear. Well,
Right.
Glenn actually got scared and shot this thing with shotgun. And he said Daddy said the thing screamed out one of the worst screams he'd ever heard in his life.
Yeah.
And it lodged back off to the left of him and down this gully. And he said this thing run faster than anything he'd ever seen. He
Right.
said it could have outrun him 2-1.
Oh yeah.
And he said this thing left out. But he said the unique thing about this, though, was they got up there to the spot where Glenn shot this thing at. And he said, normally, you get shot with a 12 gauge shotgun, they're going to be patches of hair, meat,
Right.
blood blowed out. He said they couldn't find a drop of nothing. He said
Oh,
they didn't find no blood, didn't find no hair, anything.
yeah.
And
Wow.
this was. He said it scared them so bad that they started having their daddy for the next two
Yeah.
or 3 months walk them out to where the school bus come through at, uh, because they was actually scared to make the trip themselves
Yeah.
that
I
early
tell
in the
you what.
morning.
From what I saw and I'm a gun guy. I wouldn't shoot one. I would do everything I could, because I don't think you're going to be carrying a pistol strong enough to do anything but make it mad. Now it may die later, but they talk about bear all the time, people screwing up and shooting them, and that just gets them going. And it's
Well,
incredible how big.
a lot of the attacks you hear of, they like, these legends of cabins getting attacked and stuff like that. That's usually what's happened.
Yes.
The human
Yes.
did something to
Yep.
piss that creature off.
Yep. Yep.
I mean, yeah,
Absolutely.
that's normal. When you've got a bad encounter with these things, 9 times out of 10, it's your fault. You've done
Yes, sir.
something to that piss one of these things off.
Yes, sir.
You,
I think they got to eat, and I think at nighttime I wouldn't mess with them. I stay on the roads, like I say, the few times I haven't gone after, because at some point, and we've noticed the couple times you'll have some activity a couple hours after dusk, and then it kind of stops.
Yep.
And I wouldn't want somebody coming messing up my dinner or my hunting or my fishing. So I feel like that's the times when somebody's interfered with them having a meal. That they get a little frustrated and aggressive, and that's just natural. Because
right. I mean,
Now,
but it's like the other creature in the wild. If you go out there and they've got especially if they've got their young with them, and you get between them and a young one, hey, you're gonna
Yep.
get you're gonna get an aggressive behavior out of them.
Right.
that's every time. That's almost every animal. I mean,
Absolutely.
we're the same way. We protect our young. I mean, you put us in a threatening situation. We us as humans, we do what we have to do to protect our loved ones. I mean, same thing.
How do you guys feel? So at nighttime, like in the late evening, I've been doing some whistling and some clapping. In nighttime, I've got a spot where you're going to pretty much get some knocks back. How do you guys feel about howling at them? Because I don't do it because I don't know what I'm saying to them.
Well, we've gotten good. We've gotten good results with howling. We've gotten a
Okay.
lot of good howls, but I don't know what we're saying to them. We've never had no bad interactions. So
Okay.
I mean,
Okay.
apparently it wasn't like enough to piss them off. But I mean, I don't know what I'm
Yeah.
telling them. So
Well, I don't know that night that you and your dad run off and left me over there. So we were down
well,
there at the
that was just
same.
Ricky. That was too close for comfort, buddy.
We were at the lake down there where Blake had his sighting at, and we'd walked in probably a mile and a half from the
Now,
truck over
hold on, Ricky. This we had been telling my dad about us having rocks thrown at us and hearing howls and stuff.
Right.
And my dad was kind of one of those that was on the fence about it. Thought it was plausible, but never thought he'd have anything happen.
Yeah.
First night he ever heard a howl. So go ahead, Ricky.
Okay, we go down there. We walk about a mile and a half in there. Now I'd had a heart attack about 2 or 3 months before this. Let me throw that in there. All right.
Yeah.
We were standing there at the edge of the lake. We decided, well, we hadn't heard anything, hadn't had any activity whatsoever. So Blake says, well, Rick, go ahead and make one more howl. So I did. Well, just as my howl ended, this thing was just right. I mean, man, like a little cove would come in there off the main lake, probably 60 yards across it, if that far.
Not far. Too close.
Oh, this thing came back. I mean, I had just finished my howl, and this thing came back, man, and sounded identical. I mean, it mimicked me to a T.
Yeah.
It sounded just like me, all except on a very higher pitch than mine.
Right.
And
much louder.
we all three look at one another, and when I turn back around, these two suckers have done run off and left me. Man, when I get back over to the truck, maybe 5 minutes later, these two are locked inside the truck. I beat on the side of the truck door. His dad rolls the window down, looks down out of the truck at me and says, hey, man, I didn't have to outrun Bigfoot. All I had to do was outrun you.
left the man recovering from a heart attack to fend for
True
himself.
story.
Yeah,
True
he
story.
did.
Woo. That's good. That is good.
They sure did, man. Them two, that's the fastest I've ever seen them cut out in my life.
Yeah, and that's what I tell people. You said you've never had any like bad interactions or anything like that or felt threatened. Same here. Like I've never had like a bad interaction per se. Now I mean, like that was startled, sure. You know what I'm saying? Like, but feared for my life, never felt.
Right.
Never felt that I was in true danger, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, man, we've had rocks thrown at us. We've had tree breaks. We've had actually one night down there had a tree actually pushed over. Now this thing actually pushed a huge tree over. Where we were standing, you could feel the ground actually shake.
Yeah.
But in those instances, I think they're more or less telling you to get the hell out of my territory.
Right. Yep.
It's intimidation factors. I mean, I think they know they can intimidate that way. So instead of getting violent, it's intimidation.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, man, I tell you what, this has really helped me a lot, getting to know you guys and share the experience and again further validate that I'm not just out of my mind here with this stuff. I know my ears work.
I've had my own personal one-on-one encounter with these things at about 40 yards. The one I saw actually up close and personal was probably I'm going to say an older juvenile. It was probably 5.5 foot tall, probably weighed about 340 pounds. But where I saw it at, like I said, we were on the creek float fishing. We came around the bend in the creek, and this thing was standing out to the left for a smaller creek running the Talking Rock, and there was a sandbar that come out kind of in a triangular shape, and this thing was out of the edge of that sandbar and was actually bent over with its hands down in the water. Well, when I first saw it, I thought it was a bear. Well,
Yeah.
this thing, I reckon it winded us, whatever, and it stood erect. And when it stood erect, I got a good view of the facial features and all of it. Thing had a wide brow,
Right.
nose kind of wider than ours, flat.
Yep.
Really no hair right on the facial area itself, but the rest of it was covered in hair. But what I
Yeah.
noticed most was I was expecting to see two bear paws come up out of the water, and no, it was like two hands, but
Yeah.
about twice the size of mine, and
Right.
with hair down to about the middle knuckle,
Yep.
and
Yep.
kind of longish fingernails on this thing. And when it saw us, it turned, and the wood line was about 40, maybe 50 feet behind it. Well, this thing, in probably just a couple of good bounds, it was gone.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never seen anything, and I've hunted ever since I was 7 years old. I've
Right.
hunted in the mountains, and
Right.
I'd never seen anything move like that.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
we got back up there. I got the raft over the side of the creek, the edge of the bank, and we walked back up to the sandbar. And where this thing was at, there were tracks like maybe where it was standing at, maybe pushed down in the soft, sandy bank there, probably 3, maybe 4 inches deep.
Yeah.
But what really struck me was there these freshwater mussel, they call them. Looks like
Right.
miniature clam shells.
Yep.
There was a big stack of those there where this thing was crouched down at. And then
Wow.
where this thing was actually eating those, getting those mussel out of the creek and eating them, or what, I don't know.
Man.
I scanned the area to make sure, there was no coon sign or anything in there. I didn't see any raccoon prints or anything. So
Man.
undoubtedly, in my mind, this thing was eating those mussel out of the water.
Yep.
And the water, the edge of the water through there was just covered in them.
Right.
So I think that's what this thing was doing, and we just kind of interrupted its meal. But
Yep.
now, in that occasion, we didn't get any kind of howls. It didn't scream at us, nothing like that. The first time that I ever actually heard a vocalization was in 1984. I was up on Big Frog Mountain in Tennessee, and actually my dog, I had about a 6-month-old blue tick that was with us, and this thing, whatever this thing was, about probably 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, I could hear it. Something come up through the woods, and it did sounded bipedal. I thought it was somebody,
Right.
but my dog, every hair on her bristled, and she charged out of the tent and ran down into the bushes. And in a minute, maybe a couple of minutes, I heard her scream out. Well, I grabbed my flashlight and gun and run down in there where she was at, and I heard this thing run off. Well, I found her. She was dead, had her neck broke.
Wow.
I went back up there for probably 3 or 4 years after this and camped out and never had any other interactions with anything. Now, whether it was a bear, whether it was Bigfoot or whatever, I don't know. I can't say that for sure.
Yeah.
But whatever it was, there was a log about maybe probably 10, 12 inches, maybe 14 inches in diameter. And whatever this thing was, this is where I found her at, was so heavy that he had stepped on this log and had snapped this log like a toothpick. Still really didn't know what I was dealing with. Then Blake and I started having these interactions down at the lake in 2011. He saw his group of them at, and we came back home after our first encounter one down there, and it screamed, or it howling at us. And we started researching this on the computer, and this is the only thing that we could actually find that mimicked the sound that we heard down there was Bigfoot sounds.
Right.
Was supposedly Bigfoot sounds.
Wow.
So it's really been an interesting deal.
How it kind of went from there, I just got the idea to go down there and howl.
Yeah.
See what happened.
They started howling back at us. And we also
back, and it kind of went from there.
We also encountered down there one night what they call the Sierra sounds, where these things were actually, it was like things talking, but it wasn't like in syllables that we use.
Yeah.
It was more like chatter. But
I've heard that.
what, Blake, about 45 minutes down there that night?
Yes.
Yeah. It wasn't
Yeah.
the Sierra Sounds, Ricky. It's Samurai Chatter.
Yeah, Samurai Chatter.
That's
Yeah.
what
Not to call you out there, but
it's I've heard some of that before, and again, I didn't know what those Sierra tapes were until I emailed. I bugged him to death for a good 2 months on Facebook asking him questions. But you hear this stuff, and yeah, I mean, what I've, like I said, I've been in the woods my whole life, man. I don't know, and I think we shake a lot of it off. It's just real easy to say that was a coyote, as a bird. That's just
Hey, guys,
something
I
you're
don't
hearing.
mean to
That's a
cut.
squirrel,
Don't
Well,
mean to cut you off.
Blake and I actually had a deal over on Blue Ridge a few months back where it sounded like owls
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
talking back and forth to one another.
Mm-hmm.
But like I told Blake, if it was owls, it had to have been 400 to 600 pound owls the way they sound.
Yeah, that was the night. That was the night that I heard. I don't know what it was, but I heard the Predator that night.
Right.
You've seen the movie Predator.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know the sounds they make.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
heard that.
Yeah.
I don't. Only time that creeped me out. Like I got in the car.
Yeah.
Like I left Ricky sitting out there, and I just went and got in the car.
Well, I tell you what, I told Charlie when they were doing the investigation. Now there's mountain lions around here. They call them panthers.
Yeah.
They're starting to show up on trail cams a little bit. The Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife, they want to tell you you're dumb, but I saw them.
That's how it is here. Yeah. Yeah,
Right,
we have actually where I live. We seen it's been back in probably 2012, 2013. They were actually one seen in our area here pretty often. I seen the tail of it. I seen like the rear end of it going into the woods just right outside of my headlights as I was pulling into my driveway. And his son, Ricky's son, actually seen it over here. So yeah, they're here too. If you ask DNR, they say they're not. But I mean,
right. Well, I was gonna say. So I stopped one night. I always remember it when I went through my midlife crisis and got divorced. I bought a 205 Mustang GT, and I did so many burnouts. I did something to the rear end, so they gave me a loaner car, a Grand Marquis. Looked like a cop car. And I was out late, and I stopped on the side of the road on the West Kentucky Parkway by a bluff. Went over there, had to take a leak, so I went over there. Something on that bluff, just a whoa, but scarier than that. I cannot do it. I went over that car. I didn't even zip my pants up, man. I went because it was right above me. My hair stood up. I went over that car, in the car, and gone. And I thought it was just a panther, but now that I'm getting into this Bigfoot stuff. It sounded more like what I'm hearing for howls and the growls and the real, what y'all just described to me, at the lake you had. It would have, I don't know.
Well, I'll tell you what, man, it's really something that people, unless they've actually experienced this for themselves, they think that people that have experienced are crazy.
Yeah.
But I'm here to tell you, I've actually experienced it. Blake's experienced it. You've experienced it, and I consider myself to be as sane as anybody else is. And
right.
But I know that the creature is there. I know it's out there. I know, how big these things can get.
Yep.
I know what kind of damage these things could actually do to a man if you actually intimidated one enough to really piss it off. I know what it can do to you. It can tear you apart with no problem. And, like I tell everybody, as long as you show these creatures respect, they're going to respect you.
I think so.
If you encroach in their territory and you really do something to make one of them mad enough, they could actually kill you in a heartbeat.
In a minute. Quick. Yeah.
Well,
go ahead.
I don't mean to cut the show off, but if we're gonna go, Ricky, we need to get going.
Okay.
Mike, glad to have you on, bud. Anytime you
love it, man.
Yeah, Mike. You've got to invite at any time. If you have anything else happen and you want to come on and share it, we're more than happy to have you back on the show.
I appreciate it, man. I look forward to it. It's great meeting you guys. It's like I say, it's helped me. It's helped me a lot, and I'll keep you posted. I'm like I say, I'm new at this, but I'm gonna take your advice. I'm gonna go back and write everything down and start taking some notes and
And if you
keep
have any
figuring it
questions, if you have
out.
any
Okay.
questions, I mean, I don't have a Facebook, but I mean, you can always contact Ricky.
Okay.
Um, if like I said, any help we can be.
I appreciate it. I
Mike, are
appreciate it.
you a member of our Northwest Georgia Cryptics on Facebook?
I don't think so.
Well, hey, just hit me up with a request, and
Okay.
we'll get you on there.
Yes, sir.
We share a lot of our evidence that we gather on there. We have
Okay.
a lot of people from all over the country that shares evidence on there, so it's a good place to go on and good learning too, people.
Yes, sir. I'll do it.
All right, man. We really appreciate it. Thank you, Mike.
Thank
Again,
you.
holler back at us anytime you want to come back on the show. You're more than welcome.
All right. Well, good luck tonight. Be safe, boys.
All right, you
Thank you,
too.
brother.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was another episode of Northwest Georgia Cryptics. Hope you enjoyed the show. For those that watched tonight or the ones that watch this thing in the future, remember hit that subscribe button, that like button, and let YouTube know that you like our content. Blake, you got anything else, bud?
As always, thank you guys. Like Ricky said, if you don't mind, hit the subscribe button, bell notification, like, and comment. If any of you guys have any encounters that you would like to share with us or like to come on the show, just get in contact with Ricky and we can make that happen. And thank you guys for your support. And I hope everybody has a good night and be safe. Stay safe in the world. That's all, Ricky.
All right. Good night, everybody.